There comes a moment in life when the world stops pretending. It doesn't come with lightning, drama, or a villain's speech. It comes quietly like a slow leak in a roof that ruins the entire house before you even notice. One day, you simply feel it. You notice people reply only when it suits them. They cancel without shame. They talk to you when they need something, then vanish. You feel a tightening in your gut. Not pain, recognition. You're not someone they respect. You're someone they use. And the ugliest part? They don't even feel guilty. Everyone likes to preach kindness, empathy, positivity. Be good to people, live with love, and all that sweet, Instagram-filtered nonsense. But beneath that glossy surface sits a brutal truth. Today's world is not driven by kindness. It is driven by leverage, and leverage has no heart. The loud ones scream for attention. The insecure ones pose online pretending they're healed. The soft ones get drained dry. But the people who actually hold power, the real operators, they move differently. Their silence is loud. Their presence is heavy. Their time is expensive. Their no actually means no. Their boundaries are not suggestions. They're walls. Machiavelli understood this long before motivational influencers spammed quotes online. He understood a fact most people still run from. Humans only respect what can walk away. They respect what has options. They respect what does not beg, cling, chase, or kneel. Approval chasers rot. Those with options rise. It's that simple. If people realize you need them more than they need you, your respect evaporates. You start adjusting. You start chasing. You start apologizing for things you did not do. You become predictable. And predictable people get used. That's why this video is not about being a bully. It's about becoming someone people think twice before disrespecting. Someone people don't joke about when you leave the room. Someone whose absence feels heavier than their presence. I'm going to give you 9 cold, quiet, ruthless psychological strategies inspired by Machiavelli's understanding of human nature strategies that will earn you respect without screaming, without flexing, without begging for validation. You'll learn how to turn distance into power, how to control what people think they know about you, how to build a boundary so subtle yet so sharp that people feel it without you ever mentioning it, how to cultivate an aura that whispers, "I am calm, but I am not soft." Before we start, flip a switch inside your mind. Write this in the comments if you're ready. I am done being soft. Let's begin. Number 1. Control your availability like a king, not a servant. Respect collapses the second people sense they have unlimited access to you. If you are always ready, always adjusting, always bending your schedule to fit theirs, you stop being a person and become an accessory. A king is not available on demand. A servant is. Your life changes the day you stop behaving like a servant in your own story. Machiavelli understood that power is not only in what you say, it's in how difficult it is for others to claim your time. When someone learns that you always accommodate, they learn something dangerous. You need them more than they need you. And once that belief forms, your respect begins to rot. They may smile, they may talk politely, but deep inside, they no longer fear losing access to you. Without that fear, respect cannot survive. Control doesn't mean rudeness. It means deliberation. You don't jump just because someone calls. You don't accept an invitation simply because it was offered. You don't rearrange your priorities because someone else is uncomfortable. You move according to your plan. Others adjust to you, not the other way around. When you control your availability, your presence becomes heavier. People notice that you're not everywhere. They notice your attention is selective. That selectiveness becomes a currency. Before they contact you, they think, "Is this worth asking?" That hesitation is the birthplace of respect. Machiavelli would say, "Men hesitate to offend those who are not easily reached." When people realize you're not instantly accessible, they become careful with their words and actions. They speak with intention. They ask with caution. They understand that careless behavior could cost them access. You train people not by speeches, but by patterns. Respond slower. Commit less. Choose wisely. Over time, people understand you are not a tool to be picked up whenever they feel bored. You are a presence. Your time is a privilege, not a default. Repeat this until it becomes instinct. I choose where my time goes. Number 2. Use controlled silence as a weapon. People fear silence because silence reveals. When they talk too much, they expose their insecurity, their motives, their desperation for approval. But when you say less, something interesting happens. They panic. They begin revealing more than they intended. They fill every quiet second with confessions, explanations, unnecessary details, all while you simply watch. Machiavelli understood silence as a strategic weapon. A ruler who says less reveals less. A ruler who reveals less can be neither predicted nor controlled. Controlled silence does not mean being mute. It means your words are deliberate. When someone finishes talking, don't jump in. Pause. Let their words hang. That pause creates a weight they can feel in their bones. It makes them wonder what you're thinking, even if you're thinking nothing. When someone challenges you, silence is often sharper than argument. The longer you wait, the more uncomfortable they become. Many times, they will soften their challenge, rephrase it, or backtrack entirely, all because you did not give them the quick emotional reaction they wanted. Silence is a mirror. It shows others who they truly are, and in that reflection, you gain leverage. People respect what they cannot read. They fear what they cannot predict. They admire what they cannot shake. There's a moment in life when you finally understand that people don't change. They only become more visible. Their motives, their intentions, their shadows, they were always there. You just weren't trained to see them. But once your eyes adjust to the darkness, the entire game shifts. You stop reacting. You start predicting. And prediction is the first real taste of power. Because once you can predict a person, you can control them without ever touching them. The interesting thing is that most people imagine betrayal as a dramatic collapse, shouting, lies, confrontation. But Machiavelli understood something far more sinister. Betrayal is rarely loud. It's usually a whisper, a delay, a subtle shift in tone, a response that took too long, a promise that's suddenly flexible. Betrayal is quiet precisely because quiet things slip past your defenses. Noise wakes you up. Silence kills you slowly. And that's why the world's sharpest people learn to read the silence, not the words. This is where you separate yourself from everyone else. Because the average person judges intention through language. Smart people judge it through patterns. Does someone treat you differently when other people are watching? Do they only support you when it benefits them? Do they avoid applauding your growth but expect a parade for theirs? Every micro-behavior is a confession. Every hesitation is a leaked truth. Most people just never learned to translate those truths. But once you do, something terrifying happens to others. They can't manipulate you anymore. They can't confuse you. They can't gaslight you into doubting your judgment. You become psychologically untouchable. And that's where the shift begins. People who once underestimated you suddenly sense something in your voice, something in your eyes. You're no longer the person they could play. You've become the person they have to calculate around. And that's when you discover the real irony. The moment you stop needing people is the moment they start chasing your approval. Humans are hardwired to desire what's not desperate. We're drawn to confidence like moths to flame, not because the flame loves us, but because the flame can burn us. And danger is attractive when it's controlled. Machiavelli called it the majesty of distance, the aura of someone who is close enough to admire, but far enough to fear. This is why the most powerful people in history never explain themselves. Explaining lowers your value. Silence forces curiosity. Curiosity breeds obsession. and obsession gives you leverage. When people can't figure you out, they start adjusting themselves to your presence, trying to fit into the version of you they imagine. That's when you become the frame, and they become the content. But let's go deeper, because power isn't created through mystery alone. Real power emerges when you understand the one rule everyone follows, but no one admits. Humans act out of self-preservation first, self-interest second, emotion third, morality last. If you don't structure your expectations around this, you will always be blindsided. People will choose what benefits them, not what's loyal to you. If you want loyalty, you must make it in their self-interest, not their moral duty. This is why Machiavelli insisted that being loved is unstable, but being respected is strategic. Love fluctuates with emotion. Respect stabilizes through fear, not physical fear, but psychological fear. The fear of losing your presence, your approval, your silence, your absence. People fear losing what gives them utility, and your power increases every time someone realizes your absence. Costs them more than your presence ever did. But here's the twist. You don't gain that level of influence by shouting your value. You gain it by demonstrating your replaceability. When people know you can walk away without collapsing, you immediately rise in their hierarchy. That's how you create psychological scarcity. Scarcity makes anything look valuable, even things people once ignored. This is the part most people fail at. They think loyalty is earned by being overly available, overly giving, overly present. But that only teaches people to treat your presence as cheap. The more they receive without effort, the more they assume you'll always give. So they stop reciprocating. They stop appreciating. They stop fearing the consequences of losing you. And that's when betrayal feels like a knife that came out of nowhere, but in reality, the blade was forged in every moment you overextended. You prevent this the same way empires prevent collapse, by controlling access. When you limit access to your time, energy, and attention, you force people to align with your standards if they want proximity, and suddenly the entire dynamic flips. They start adjusting to you. They start analyzing their words before speaking. They start treating your presence like an opportunity instead of a default. This is where your power becomes almost invisible, because it's not based on force, but on psychological demand. But let's take it even deeper. There's a form of power people rarely discuss, because it's dangerous if understood by someone who hasn't built emotional discipline. The quiet power of non-reaction. When you stop emotionally reacting, people start revealing themselves out of frustration. When someone can't trigger you, they panic. And in that panic, they expose their intent. Try it. Watch how someone who used to control you suddenly becomes unstable. When you don't give them emotional fuel, they get louder, they exaggerate, they guilt trip, they shift blame, they test boundaries. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're no longer doing what benefits them. This is where you stand at a crossroads. You can react and lose your position, or you can stay still and watch their entire psychological structure collapse. The moment you choose silence over reaction, you're no longer playing defense, you're observing. And observation is where strategy is born. Every move they make gives you data. Every emotional spike is a clue. Every attempt at manipulation is a confession. Eventually, you know them better than they know themselves. And that's when influence becomes effortless. You don't manipulate them directly, you simply present choices where the option that benefits you also feels like the easiest option for them. That's the real Machiavellian skill, guiding behavior without force, steering decisions without commands, shaping outcomes without revealing your intentions. But none of this is possible if you still see people the way the average person sees them, through the lens of emotion. Emotions distort decisions. They fog judgment. They turn dangerous people into misunderstood souls, and obvious red flags into maybe they'll change. You can't play chess while pretending the opponent is harmless. You must see every piece for its function, not for its charm. The world becomes clearer the moment you replace emotional analysis with behavioral analysis. People don't do what they feel, they do what they are. Consistency is the truth of character. Patterns never lie. And once you see patterns, you see power. Patterns are the language the world uses to communicate truth. People lie with words because words are cheap. But they reveal themselves with patterns because patterns require effort to fake. If someone consistently diminishes your achievements, that's not insecurity, it's strategy. If they always forget when it benefits them and remember when it hurts you, that's not coincidence, it's intention. When people show you patterns, they're giving you the blueprint of their psychology. And here's the real twist. Most people ignore those patterns because accepting them requires giving up the fantasy of who you wanted that person to be. It's easier to protect an illusion than confront reality. But you don't become powerful by preserving illusions. You become powerful by dissecting them. Once you replace emotional hope with behavioral evidence, you stop being a target. You become a strategist. This is where emotional detachment becomes your greatest weapon, not coldness, not cruelty, but disciplined distance. When you detach, you stop negotiating with people's words and start negotiating with their actions. You stop seeking reassurance and start seeking consistency. And the moment you prioritize consistency, your entire life upgrades. You choose better alliances. You spot threats earlier. You navigate conflict without fear. Emotion becomes a tool, not a prison. But let's dive deeper. Machiavelli observed that people don't betray you because they want to hurt you. They betray you because they want something more. Power, attention, validation, control. And if you understand what they want, you can predict exactly how they'll behave. This is why the most intelligent people don't fight betrayal, they study it. Every betrayal is information. Every disappointment is a revelation. Every act of disloyalty is a preview of that person's long-term nature. But the average person reacts emotionally. They rant, they cry, they explode. They try to fix what's already broken. And that emotional reaction destroys their advantage, because it tells the betrayer exactly how to hurt them again. When you react, you educate the enemy. When you stay composed, you confuse them. This is where your mythical presence begins to form the presence of someone who understands the game, but doesn't announce that understanding. Someone who sees through people, but lets them believe they're opaque. Someone who notices betrayals, but pretends not to. Because pretending not to notice is sometimes more powerful than confronting. It lets people underestimate you long enough for their habits to reveal every weakness they have. Now here's a truth most people aren't ready to hear. If someone can betray you once, they already rehearsed it in their mind long before the act. Betrayal doesn't begin in the moment, it begins in the imagination. That means their loyalty ended the moment they started envisioning a version of life where you weren't relevant. By the time they execute the betrayal, their decision is old. You just weren't aware of it. But this awareness shouldn't make you paranoid, it should make you prepared. Machiavelli believed that expecting loyalty without leverage is foolish. People are loyal to what improves their life, protects their reputation, or strengthens their identity. If you want loyalty, you must understand which of those currencies you offer. And if you stop offering it, loyalty evaporates instantly. This is why the most powerful individuals never put themselves in positions where someone else's loyalty is their foundation. They build systems, networks, alternatives. They create redundancies. They maintain options, because options create confidence. Confidence creates calm. And calm decisions are always stronger than emotional ones. But let's go even further into the darker layers. There's a hidden advantage in betrayal that nobody talks about. Every betrayal upgrades you. It forces you to evolve, sharpen, detach, observe. It wipes illusions off your path. It gives you clarity you weren't brave enough to claim voluntarily. The person who betrayed you thinks they weakened you, but they actually trained you. And nothing is more dangerous than someone who learned from pain instead of collapsing from it. That's when a strange transformation occurs. You stop fearing betrayal. You start anticipating it. You start seeing the early signs before they even know they're showing them. A changed tone, a sudden politeness, a shift in priorities, a slight distancing. These microsignals accumulate like dust on a glass. At first invisible, then undeniable. And once you can see that early, you can redirect the entire dynamic. You can remove access. You can cut expectations. You can strengthen your position. You can prepare alternatives. You can detach before they strike. And that is the deepest power, ending the emotional debt before the betrayal invoice arrives. Let's push even further. Modern power doesn't come from authority, it comes from perspective. When you see reality clearly, you navigate it effortlessly. But clarity requires a level of inner coldness most people run from. Because clarity forces you to confront the truth about people you care about. It forces you to see when love has already died, when trust was never real, when loyalty was conditional the entire time. This is why the people with the highest perception often look emotionless, because they've already mourned the illusions others still cling to. But don't misunderstand. Coldness isn't about cruelty. It's about control. Control over your reactions. Control over your expectations. Control over your vulnerabilities. You're not becoming heartless, you're becoming unreadable. And unreadability is power. If people can't predict your emotions, they can't manipulate your decisions. The loudest person in the room has no influence. The quietest one, the one watching, calculating, choosing their words with precision, that's the one everyone adjusts around. And that's the shift you need to embody. Now here's a psychological twist that Machiavelli hinted at but never explicitly stated. When you evolve beyond emotional dependency, you create a gravitational pull. People who once ignored you start noticing your absence. People who once underestimated you start feeling threatened by your silence. People who once had power over you start sensing they lost access to your emotions. And that terrifies them, because once someone loses control over your emotional state, they lose control over the entire relationship. That's why your evolution will provoke resistance. Some will accuse you of changing. Some will try to guilt trip you into shrinking again. Some will test your boundaries to see if the old you still exists. This is a natural consequence of growth. When you elevate your standards, you become incompatible with people who thrived on your old weakness, and you must not collapse back into the person they prefer. Their version of you was designed for their convenience, not your evolution. This is where most people fail. They start strong. They pull back. They create boundaries. They detach. But the moment someone guilt trips them, they fold. And folding destroys the entire transformation. Because humans test boundaries the same way animals test fences, they push until it breaks. If it breaks, they own you. If it holds, they respect you. The strength of your boundary determines the strength of your influence. But let's confront the darkest truth of all. You will have to outgrow people who never thought you'd evolve. You will have to disappoint people who benefited from your old naivety. You will have to walk alone at times because the path to power never has traffic. And yes, it will feel cold, but it's a sacred cold, a cold that rebuilds you, a cold that sharpens your instincts and reshapes your identity. Because on the other side of that coldness is a version of you that nobody can betray, manipulate, or underestimate again. Power is not built in public. It is cultivated in silence, shaped in solitude, and revealed only through results. The loud ones broadcast every move because they need validation to stay motivated. But the silent ones? They move like storms, felt before they are seen, respected before they are understood. Silence is misunderstood by the weak because the weak rely on noise to feel relevant. But silence is the natural habitat of the powerful because the powerful rely on discipline, not attention. And when you start moving this way quietly, strategically, without oversharing, you become unpredictable. And unpredictability breeds respect. Every time you announce a plan, you create unnecessary resistance. People start analyzing you, doubting you, projecting their fears onto your ambitions. Some will sabotage you directly, others will do it subtly. A casual comment, a small discouragement, a doubt disguised as love. But when you move in silence, their opinions are irrelevant. Their doubts don't matter because they don't know what to target. Nothing can be stopped if nothing can be seen. Your progress becomes a shock. Your evolution becomes undeniable. Your silence becomes your armor. Machiavelli warned that visibility increases vulnerability, not because visibility is bad, but because people react emotionally to what they perceive as threat. When you rise, others feel smaller. When you grow, others feel insecure. When you succeed, others feel exposed. That is why many betrayals come from those closest to you. They had the best view of your potential and feared what would happen when you learned how to use it. So instead of announcing your plans, announce your standards. Don't tell people what you will do. Tell them what you will no longer tolerate. But let's go deeper. One of the greatest power moves you will ever master is removing emotional reactions from external events. Most people react immediately because their ego has a short fuse. Someone insults them, they explode. Someone ignores them, they panic. Someone leaves them on scene, they overthink. But when you detach your emotional triggers from other people's actions, you become untouchable. Their insults don't penetrate. Their silence doesn't disturb you. Their approval no longer dictates your identity. You operate from internal stability instead of external stimulation. And stability is terrifying to those who rely on chaos to stay relevant. And now we arrive at the transformation that truly separates the powerful from the ordinary. The ability to walk away. Most people can leave physically, but stay chained emotionally. They leave a relationship, but keep checking profiles. They end a friendship, but keep replaying memories. They stop talking to someone, but keep seeking closure. This is not walking away. This is self-torture disguised as strength. Real power is the ability to detach without resentment, without explanation, without theatrics. When you walk away with composure, you become unforgettable. Because people expect dramatic exits, emotional breakdowns, grand speeches. But when you exit silently, you create an unfinished psychological story in their mind. They wonder if you cared. They wonder why you left. They wonder what you're doing now. That lingering uncertainty is power. But let's expose a truth most people are afraid to admit. Some relationships are not meant to be fixed, they're meant to be escaped. And your desire to fix them is the reason you stay stuck. You can't heal someone who enjoys being broken. You can't love someone who thrives on chaos. You can't change someone who benefits from remaining the same. Your compassion becomes their convenience. Your patience becomes their playground. Your forgiveness becomes permission. That is why Machiavelli believed it is safer to be feared than loved, not because fear is superior, but because love without boundaries invites exploitation. And here's the twist. When you finally stop trying to prove your worth to people who never valued it, you unlock a new level of self-awareness. You realize you weren't asking for too much, you were simply asking the wrong person. You realize your energy wasn't overwhelming, they were just too weak to handle it. You realize your loyalty wasn't misplaced, it was misallocated. And once you realign your loyalty with people who actually deserve it, your entire life starts shifting. Opportunities appear, confidence rises, peace returns. You stop chasing and start attracting. This is the final stage of your transformation, becoming someone whose presence feels like a privilege, someone whose absence feels like a loss, Someone who no longer seeks validation because they validate themselves. Someone who no longer fears betrayal because they recognize it early. Someone who no longer begs for respect because their aura demands it. Someone who no longer gets drained by relationships because they choose them with precision. You become someone who walks into a room and doesn't have to speak to dominate it. Someone who can destroy an argument with silence. Someone who can shift dynamics with a single look. Someone who embodies calm, intense to quiet, but powerful. Composed but lethal. Gentle but impossible to manipulate. Machiavelli believed the strongest individuals are not the ones who dominate others. They are the ones who master themselves. Because self-mastery creates a psychological presence that radiates authority without aggression, influence without force, respect without demand. And once you reach that level, people don't just listen to you. They adjust to you. They align with you. They fear losing access to you. This is your final evolution. Not becoming colder, but becoming clearer. Not becoming heartless, but becoming harder to deceive. Not becoming emotionless, but mastering your emotions so deeply that no one can weaponize them against you. Not becoming ruthless, but refusing to negotiate your self-worth ever again. This is how you turn every betrayal into a blueprint. Every disappointment into discipline. Every wound into wisdom. Every setback into strategy. Every silence into power. And from this moment forward, you don't chase respect, you embody it.